When the skies of the Audit homeworld erupted with the fiery plasma of the Krozak Armada, their civilization's collapse was swift and merciless. Their diplomatic attempts failed catastrophically, followed by a military defense that crumbled within hours. The survivors, millions of them, found refuge only in ancient bunkers left from a forgotten war. But time was running out as the Krozak prepared their world diggers, massive machines designed to crack open these final sanctuaries like eggs. Ambassador Phi, the lone surviving diplomat of his people, stood before an outdated communications console in one of these bunkers. The air around him felt heavy, stale with the breath of too many refugees and thick with desperation. He reached out to every ally the Audit had cultivated, clinging to the hope that someone, anyone, would answer their call in this darkest hour. But hope was bleeding away with each rejection. The Scale Republic, their oldest trading partner, refused with hollow apologies. "We cannot risk war with the Krozak," Ambassador Sober said, his vertical pupils narrowing to slits. "The Council has spoken. One by one, their supposed friends abandoned them. The Tarati cited ancient trade disputes. The Zor claimed fleet maintenance issues. The Gathi simply ignored their calls." Each rejection was another nail in their species' coffin. The desperate scene unfolded in a dimly lit bunker communications center. Phi stood frozen before the blank screen, his shoulders slumped beneath the weight of his ceremonial ambassador's sash. Beside him stood his assistant Vizai, her blue-tinted skin almost gray under the harsh lighting. The orange irises that marked their species were now ringed with deep red, the unmistakable chromatic display of absolute despair that Audit couldn't hide even if they wanted to. Evolution had cursed them with transparency of emotion when diplomatic masks were needed most. "That's the fourth rejection today," Vizai said, her voice barely above a whisper dot, as massive explosions rocked the surface above, sending cascades of ancient dust from the ceiling. Their options dwindled to nothing. The tactical displays painted a grim picture. World diggers warming up their plasma cores, preparing to breach their final sanctuary dot. Then Visa spoke the words that would change everything. "The humans." Phi looked at her as if she'd suggested they grow wings and fly to safety. "The humans?" he repeated incredulously. "Our ambassadors have had virtually no contact with the Earthborn. The only interaction I can recall was at that cultural exchange event 20 years ago where I ended up petting one of their furry companions. A dog. That was it. The sum total of their diplomatic relationship with humanity. One ambassador petting a dog at a cultural event 2 decades ago. But as another explosion sent vibrations through the floor that Phi could feel in his bones, desperation crystallized into decision. What did they have to lose? They were already counting their final hours. Part 2. The impossible response. With trembling fingers, Phi initiated the FTL communication to Earth. The screen flickered through various connection nodes, bouncing their signal across relay stations light years apart. The process was almost surreal, watching data packets race through cosmic infrastructure built by civilizations long transcended or extinct. When the connection finally stabilized, the screen showed Earth, that blue-white marble that had produced one of the galaxy's most enigmatic species. Then the image changed to reveal a human woman with brown hair pulled back in what they called a ponytail, sitting in a mundane office complete with what looked like a motivational poster featuring a cat hanging from a tree branch. "Good morning," or "Whatever time it is for you," she said with surprising cheerfulness. "This is Susan Novak with Earth's Extraterrestrial Affairs Department. Thank you for contacting Earth. How may I direct your call today?" The telemarketing tone was so incongruous with their apocalyptic situation that Phi found himself speechless. Vizay stepped in, her diplomatic training taking over. "This is Assistant Ambassador Vizay of the Audit Democratic Republic. We are requesting immediate military assistance. Our homeworld is under invasion by the Krozak Empire. This is an extinction-level attack. Susan's expression shifted, becoming more focused. After checking something on her system, her eyes suddenly lit with recognition. "Wait," Susan interrupted, tilting her head slightly as a smile spread across her face. "You're the blue folks who weren't afraid of dogs from the cultural exchange 20 years ago. Oh my gosh, you're the ambassador who gave Colonel Johnson's German Shepherd belly rubs. We have a photo of that in our break room. It's literally famous." Of all the things Phi had expected, being remembered for petting a dog wasn't one of them. The emotional ring around his eyes flickered between despair and confusion so rapidly it created a strobe effect. When asked what exactly they needed, both Phi and Vise said in perfect unison, "Send us anything. We're getting slaughtered." Susan's smile widened in a way that seemed to speak of decisions already made. "Let me see what I can do," she said, before muting her microphone to speak with others off-screen. What followed was a flurry of activity. Uniformed military men appearing, animated conversations, files being pulled up, secure calls being made. And then, impossibly, Susan returned with news that defied belief. "I'll need your exact coordinates, spatial position, and local system markers," she said firmly. "Hope will be there in 30 minutes via hyperjump." 30 minutes? Phi couldn't hide his shock. But the nearest human military base is in the Sagittarius. That's weeks away, even with 30 minutes. Susan repeated with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what resources were being deployed. "There will be a stealth ship arriving at your bunker entrance. I need you to be there to meet them. Humanity still needs to ask a few questions before we start, quote, blowing things up. Can you get to the surface safely?" When the call ended, both audits stood in stunned silence. It was either a cruel joke or a miracle. But with world diggers about to break through their bunkers, they had nothing to lose. 30 minutes later, dressed in radiation suits, Ambassador Phi and Vise emerged onto the hellscape that had once been their capital city. What had been a thriving metropolis was now a smoking ruin, buildings reduced to twisted metal and melted glass, the sky burning orange with fires and the residual energy of orbital bombardments. They crouched behind the twisted remains of a peace monument, watching the minutes tick by on their chronometers, certain they had made a fatal mistake. Then, without warning, a shimmer in the air materialized into a small craft of matte black that seemed to absorb all light. It looked fragile, almost delicate. If this was Earth's idea of military assistance, they were doomed. A hatch opened, and a single human stepped out, wearing what looked like a simple flight suit. No armor, no visible weapons. Ambassador Phi, Assistant Visi. The human's voice came through their helmet comms, casual and relaxed despite the hellscape around them. "I'm Oliver. Your ride's here." Phi approached cautiously, unable to hide his dismay at the tiny vessel. This is what Earth sent? This single small craft?" Oliver grinned, that human expression that showed teeth that somehow meant friendliness rather than aggression. "Oh, this? Nah, this is just the shuttle. Come on aboard. We need to get moving. The light show is about to start, and trust me, you want a good seat for this." As they broke atmosphere, the shuttle's walls became transparent to reveal the Krozak fleet hanging in orbit like a swarm of metal predators. Hundreds of ships, from fighters to massive dreadnoughts, loomed above their dying world. The sight made Phi's heart sink further. What possible help could humans provide against such overwhelming force? "There," Oliver said, pointing toward the edge of the system. "Right on schedule. You might want to hold on to something." At first, Phi saw nothing. Then space itself seemed to tear open, reality bending in ways that made his eyes water and his brain reject what he was seeing. The fabric of the universe pulled apart like curtains, revealing something that shouldn't exist. What emerged defied comprehension. It was a sphere the size of a small moon. But that was where any comparison to natural celestial bodies ended. The core seemed almost alive, contained within layers of strange matter that shifted between states of existence: solid, liquid, plasma, and something else that had no name, because it shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. Around this impossible core, 3 rings rotated at different angles and speeds, each one the width of a continent. Ambassador Phi, Assistant Vizai, Oliver said formally, his casual demeanor replaced by something approaching reverence. Allow me to introduce you to the few finality, though we just call her the Star Destroyer. First of her class, hopefully the last. She was designed as a deterrent. Really, the weapon you build so you never have to use it. Turns out the engineering team got a bit enthusiastic. As they docked in a bay larger than most cities, every human they passed greeted them warmly. "Hey, it's the puppy-petting couple. Welcome aboard. Glad you made it. Don't worry, we've got this handled." Each time Phi or Vizai tried to correct the misconception about their relationship, the humans just smiled and moved on, locked into their narrative. The bridge was a marvel, a sphere within a sphere, suspended in null gravity with displays covering every surface. Information flowed across the screens in strange patterns, data streams interweaving like living things. At the center stood Captain Jeffrey Smith, a human with graying hair and sharp eyes. "Ambassador Phi, Assistant Vizai," he greeted them. "Welcome aboard humanity's worst-kept secret and biggest stick." When Phi suggested attempting communication with the Krozak first, the captain's response was chilling in its casualness. "They see us," Captain Smith said calmly. "They've been sending increasingly panicked signals since we arrived. I'm ignoring them for now. Let them sweat a bit. Fear is a wonderful negotiating tool, and they've had 3 days to terrorize your people. A few minutes of return favor seems fair, but what happened next left both Odits speechless. Instead of engaging the Krozak fleet above their world, Smith ordered, "Navigation. Set course for the Krozak home system." "Did you say their home system?" Phi's voice cracked. "That's right." Smith's smile hardened with an edge that reminded Phi the humans were, despite their often cheerful demeanor, apex predators who had clawed their way to the top of their food chain through violence and cunning. "We're not going to fight them here. Too much collateral damage to your world. No, we're going to visit their home, have a little chat, make sure they understand the consequences of their actions." The journey took 6 minutes. Not days, 6 minutes. When they arrived at the Krozak homeworld, Smith calmly ordered weapons to target the 7th planet, an uninhabited frozen world at the edge of the system, with 1% power on the main gun. The demonstration was both beautiful and terrifying. The Star Destroyer glowed like a star. The rings aligned for a fraction of a second, creating a strange geometric configuration that seemed to make space itself hold its breath. And then a beam of something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite matter launched out across space. In seconds, it struck the frozen planet, a massive ball of ice and frozen gases that had circled this star for billions of years. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the planet melted, massive fissures splitting across its surface, exposing a molten core that should have frozen solid eons ago. The bridge fell silent. Phi and Vizay stood frozen, their emotional rings cycling through colors so quickly they appeared white, the chromatic equivalent of a system crash. Then Captain Smith opened communications with the Krozak home fleet. The main display showed a Krozak commander, a being that looked like someone had crossed a mantis with a nightmare and given it too many eyes. All of those eyes went wide with what Phi assumed was shock. "This is Earth speaking," Smith began conversationally. "I'm here regarding your invasion of the Odit homeworld. You're going to withdraw immediately. You're going to pay reparations, and you're going to sign a non-aggression pact, or I'm going to demonstrate what happens at 2% power. Your home planet looks lovely, by the way. The Krozak commander's mandibles clicked frantically. But the Audit are not. Humans have no treaty with. Why are you? They pet our dogs, Smith said simply. 20 years ago at a cultural exchange, Ambassador Phi here pet Colonel Johnson's German Shepherd. Made the dog's whole day. You are threatening to destroy our world because of a pet interaction 2 decades ago? We also have a policy against slaughtering sapients. But yes, Smith's tone suggested this was the most reasonable thing in the universe. The Krozak commander turned to someone off-screen, clicking and chittering rapidly, then back to the screen. We ... we agree to your terms. Withdrawal begins immediately. But this is insane. The Galactic Council will hear of this. It was just an empty space rock. They will forgive us, Smith said cheerfully. When the connection ended, Smith turned to Phi and Vizai, who were still processing what they had just witnessed. That's it? Vizai managed. You just threatened them, and they're leaving? Well, I also destroyed a planet, Smith pointed out. That tends to make an impression. The Krozak are bullies. They attack those they see as weak and alone, but they're not stupid. Phi found his voice. Captain, we can't thank you enough. You saved our entire species. I don't know how we can ever repay. Pet more dogs, Smith said seriously. And maybe get married. You two make a cute couple. We're not a couple, they said in unison, their emotional rings flaring purple. Smith laughed. Well, maybe you should think about it. Post-war reconstruction is usually a good time for romance. Plus shared trauma, facing death together, being saved by an impossibly powerful alien weapon. That's romantic comedy material right there. The displays showed the Krozak fleet beginning to withdraw from Audit space. It was really happening. The invasion was over. Phi looked at Vizai, seeing her in a slightly different light. They'd worked together for years, traveled the galaxy, and now faced the end of the world side by side. The red rings of despair around their eyes were fading, replaced by swirls of purple embarrassment and something else, a soft pink that hinted at possibilities. Perhaps, Vizai said quietly, we should get a dog. Captain Smith laughed again. Now you're talking. We'll send you a whole breeding pair, German Shepherds, since they're historically lucky for you. Consider it a gift from Earth to Audit. As the Star Destroyer began its journey back to Audit, ready to oversee the Krozak withdrawal and help with reconstruction, Phi marveled at the absurdity of it all. They'd called for help, expecting nothing, and received a weapon that could destroy stars. You know, he said out of the side of his mouth, as they stood watching the stars streak by, the humans are completely insane. Yes, she agreed, the pink in her emotional ring deepening. Good thing there are kind of insane. In the end, it had taken less than 2 hours from their desperate plea to the complete withdrawal of the Krozak. The story would spread across the galaxy within days. How humanity sent a Star Destroyer to save the alien dog petting couple. Even if they weren't actually a couple. At least, not yet.